Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is March 1st. It is 6:19 in the evening and I'm just waking up. Man, I spent pretty much 12 hours sleeping and waking up and sleeping and waking up today. I literally had a dream at one point where I realized that I was actually a ghost, which I think is my subconscious telling my conscience that, man, you're sleeping so much, you're getting close to the big sleep. Uh, Almost certainly, like, poor quality sleep has finally caught up with me, and even though 12 hours of sleep probably is not that good, but dreaming and remembering dreams uh, tends to be a factor as far as a decent indicator of getting good sleep, that you at least are entering the REM stages of sleep and not just sleeping for an hour before you can get into that REM stage, deep stage of sleep. Consequently, that's probably about the most pathetic accountability section one can have. And it's definitely a good thing that I work for myself, or arguably don't work for anybody at this point, because yeah, YouTube's not monetized me. Um, because otherwise, if I had a 9 to 5, I would definitely not have shown up for work today, or I would have been dragging. But otherwise, for the accountability section, I'm playing Danganronpa, and it's kind of ridiculous because I finished the main story. And on the Steam version of Danganronpa, you get the 1.2 reloaded content also, which is effectively a completely different game, not the type of game I would want to play at all. And it's not particularly well integrated into the gameplay mechanics, anyways. What because throughout the entirety of the main game, there's kind of this side element in which you're supposed to go on relationship dates with both the male and female characters to get their backstory and get to know them a little bit better and become friends with them. I would still use the phrase date there. That you could say hangouts. They are definitely closer to hangouts more than dates, because there really is just no romance in any of them at all. But if this was a different kind of visual novel type game, it definitely would have been a romantic date pass. But you can't actually hang out with enough people unless you play the main game multiple times over. And I assume you can do that in the New Game Plus. Or maybe there is. I still have yet to actually confirm that there is actually a New Game Plus for the main story. It may literally just be that at the beginning of like chapter 1, once you beat chapter 1, they expected you to potentially jump out to the menu and just grind and play the dating sections multiple times, because this is a murder mystery game. So by the end of chapter 1, 2 characters are completely dead. You had 3 opportunities to hang out with them. You would not have been able to max out your relationship with both of those characters in those 3 hangout opportunities. Uh, and so the game kind of feels almost like it was released episodically, but I don't think it really was, being a PSP game. That would be weird, to say the least, but could have been digitally released. Uh, let's see how pathetic we are at the moment. Runecraft, and any victories. Do we want to re-roll a 40 or 50? I think that'd be pretty terrible. Shadowcraft, maybe once. Okay. I assume, well, we don't have the treasure chests anymore, so can we play unranked for these? Yeah, we can. So we could potentially speed up the process today. If I can figure out how to click the unranked button. Runecraft would be amulets there. So yeah, the side game, the 1.2 Reload, is this experience where it's all of the characters arrive at the beginning of the story, and then they've added extra content as like this is a prequel that is just not mentioned, and at some points, I guess, in the original game. But you're not doing the same thing. There are no murders, there's no mysteries, there's no real dialogue that's scripted. Instead, all you're doing is you're assigning the 15 characters you have to go and either search classrooms of the school in a very 8-bit pixel art way. It's kind of like a Tamagotchi or a strategy game, a resource management game. It's very, very Asian in that fact. And you're trying to collect resources, and by collecting resources, you get enough of what you need to build a final goal product that you have to turn in after about 5 days. You do that 10 times, and you have the entirety, and you win and get some kind of ending. After each day, you're given the opportunity to either hang out with them and do those dates again, so fill out all of your things. And this is where it's really not integrated with the main story stuff, because the hangouts and the character backstory stuff gives you abilities and skill points to use those abilities for the main game. But they do absolutely nothing for the additional game. This game that seems almost like it was just designed to tide people over as they maybe were waiting to release a Danganronpa 2.
The uncharted desert awaits. I'm just warming up.
What would have made a lot of sense is because in this extra game you level up your searching abilities. You start at about a 2 or 3, and you can go up to 9 for both your searching abilities and your cleaning abilities. With a little bit of help, you can get it down to one person needing to clean, possibly one person only needing to clean every other day, which gives you a lot more time to get resources. It's pretty easy to fail, pretty hard to fail, even though I managed to do it because I wasted a bunch of resources crafting things I didn't need. Plus, I did not focus first and foremost on getting these one level upgrades that would like double the amount of resources you get. So like on day 1, had I focused to get the double resources, I would have been in a much better position. Let's see. Do that, I guess. And then you can play this. Is there a reason to play it? I guess there is. And then
I'm just warming
kill
up.
that, I guess. That's fine. So yeah, you would think the skill points from the main game would be the same skill points that you would associate and deliver to the characters at the beginning of the additional game. And once you got to the max skill points that the main game allows you to collect, that would potentially have been, which I think it's 40 or 50 skill points there. Maybe as high as 60. 3 damage to all enemies. Are we ready for that?
Why, you've got the face of a chameleon.
Alright, so we've got a 6 character, a 5, and a 1. If we evolve,
Mana, come forth.
we can keep that one
I
alive.
love how you slither about. What a squishy body you
Stand
have.
down. What do
Then
we
we
have
can
here?
do that.
Justice finds
No.
a way.
Wouldn't.
So yeah, it would make a lot of sense if the skill points you got applied to this extra game. It would make a lot of sense if the skills you got also somehow applied to the game, but because it doesn't and it's just this completely separate thing, I'm just now playing this totally different game that really is going to want me to rush through it at least 3 times because it has its own endings, and you on top of doing the dates that were in the main game, they've introduced a secondary tier of dates where you're trying to get the relationship of all 15 characters up to 10 hearts, and that works by taking a person to one of the locations from the main game, and then they prompt you in a conversation to pick between 1, 2, or 3 responses, and if you get the response perfect, you get 1 full heart. If you get it half right, you get half heart, and if you pick the absolute wrong response, then you end up getting no hearts, which you could easily use a walkthrough for. And when you go through this extra game, it gives you 200 Monokuma tokens, but if you don't go through the extra game, you probably won't have enough Monokuma tokens to unlock all of the extra content, the character art, the music, the movies, and the events is what they're called, which are just non-animated movies, as they were.
Hold up your swords with pride.
Which it feels really ridiculous to lock any of that behind Monokuma tokens after you've specifically already spent a ton of Monokuma tokens to get one of every present. But you won't get the achievement for getting one of every present until you beat this extra game, because the extra presents also include getting your relationship on these secondary dates up to the max of 10 levels, and at that point you get another present at the end of each run of the extra game, which is supposedly, I've yet to see it, the underwear of each character, so both the guys and the girls end up giving you their underwear as a joke present, which I imagine if it's like any of the other presents in the game, it is pixely and you don't get to see any cheesecake. The entire game kind of implies that they thought there was going to be cheesecake. There's one character wearing a skirt at the very beginning of the game that it implies you would have seen an upskirt shot there. Even the character art focuses on like her having black panties and it being shown, but at least in the Steam version over it's blackened out and censored, and there's not enough of that type of content. There's a lot of dirty jokes and talk in the game that feels out of place, but it doesn't really show anything except for in one scene you see one of the female characters in her underwear on her bed crying, which I guess that's a weird bit of cheesecake. But it's hardly particularly explicit, and frankly, if I don't want to live in a world where seeing someone in their underwear is so extremely explicit that it's considered maybe pornographic's the wrong word. But if it's considered a big deal, that would be a good word to use. Alright, well, so if you play at least 0 profiles, deal 2 damage to the enemy leader. Okay, well, kill that. And then this could do an Earthright. That'd probably be fine.
A galaxy of gems tumbles and twirls.
Okay, 4 then lets me do that.
I'm just warming up.
Kill that.
Adieu.
Aw, man. I can only do damage to that guy.
The earth rains from above.
Alright, I may be stuck here, and I may not be able to win. So yeah, I have been playing Danganronpa, but I've been playing a very different Danganronpa than what I was expecting. Frankly, there is something in the art showing a ending where everybody escapes with their lives. I don't know how you get to that ending, and there are a couple points where I think it's kind of fairly obvious that there was this branching path.
How did I lose?
So I might check out a walkthrough. I'm close enough and I put enough hours into it, and I probably put like 100 hours in the Danganronpa. So I kind of feel like I want to get all the achievements, but it is certainly a very long experience, and it once again just highlights how since Danganronpa is a half slice of life, school life experience game that then has murder mysteries added on top of that, it highlights to me that if there was a visual novel with no big twist and it was just a romance slice of life visual novel game, I think I probably would not be interested in that. It would have to be a lot of people praising it, and so I need to remind myself not to do that, and remind myself that these visual novels are super long.
Speed things up.
In retrospect, Danganronpa makes Virtue's Last Reward look a lot better because it is older people, more mature people, not just a bunch of high school students, which is harder for me to relate to, certainly. And Danganronpa is just not well. The characters aren't well written. The story's not well written. It's 99% all around just setting up bits of information to set up mysteries that aren't even that complicated. It really makes the whole game feel like it's for 14-year-olds. There's a lot of times where it prompts you in conversations to answer very basic questions, almost like it's trying to be an educational game. And sometimes those basic questions are probably obvious to Japanese people, but they aren't super obvious to Westerners. Like city names of cities in Japan and suburbs are not going to be obvious. I suppose it doesn't really matter that much because it just forces you into the right answer anyways. But it definitely screams that the producer of this company didn't really have a lot of focus and didn't really know what he was doing. Because you can definitely see throughout the entire game there's lines of dialogue that have been focused and recorded on that are weird. There's points that should have been recorded that weren't recorded, and points that should have not been recorded that were recorded, and vice versa. I may have said the same thing twice there. But there's a lot of poses and animations that almost all of them are very extreme and wild emotions where it feels like that was unnecessary. to have characters jump from one wild visual focus to visual pose to another. I assume that it was done because in a manga format that might make a lot more sense to have characters have a wild facial focus, and that may very well just be an art style decision in a manga, but in a game where they have to reuse that pose over and over again instead of a manga where it may very well have only been used in one pose ever, there's a bit of a difference there.
Bow your head and prepare for the end. Eat up!
So yeah, there's frankly a lot to complain about. I am a little bit interested in seeing what happens in Danganronpa 2. I kind of feel like it very possibly is just going to be more of the same. Otherwise, I would almost wonder if it's just going to be a completely different game in totality.
I feel slushy.
Best of luck to you.
See how this works.
For the sake of the future.
Okay, 3-5, which would have him hit that, or 4-6.
Mana, come forth. Onward to a bright future.
Okay.
I see all.
Kill that.
My stomach.
And then in the turn. Twitter has still been fairly a pain in the butt. Oh, the Return of Obra Dinn is airing on my channel right now, and the developer of that just announced that Apple Music and Spotify now has the soundtrack if you like the nautical pirate themes that play in that game. That's might be something to interest some people, but I would definitely say play Return of the Obra Dinn first before getting music. Although I don't know, on Spotify you may not actually be paying for the music, so that may not matter anyways. Paper Shinigami.
For the sake of the future.
And I can't kill that. So I could deal 3 damage to a random follower. We could try that.
Time to tidy things up.
And then the turn. So yeah, Twitter, I don't know what the deal with Twitter is. It seems like it's just I think it's just being weird with me. Oh, on top of that, after last stream, I did try to change all my settings on my router and get it back to the way it was with the ad blocking and all the other settings. I still really haven't gotten QoS on it. There's just nothing though fixing the Wi-Fi issue completely. And this is a completely different router because I think either in trying to fix the issue in the previous, I either broke the router or the router in the previous one just broke after 4 years, which that sucks. These are expensive devices, and I actually took it apart and just to see if there was fans or anything salvageable in it, and there's some heat sinks on it and the case itself and some antenna attachment points that are fairly decent things. So maybe you could get about $60 worth of core components if you're into making things.
Don't underestimate me.
But
Okay. No more
you know, I
crying.
would much rather have had 2 routers that would have worked together But yeah, there's either something with the driver that DDWRT is using, where when it gets a very weak signal, it just messes up the internet permanently, or something wrong with my settings, even though I've tried to be very good about that, or maybe even something wrong with like DNS mask settings, but it seems to really only happen on the router side and nowhere else. On the Wi-Fi side and not on the LAN side, and it really only seems to happen through my cell phone, which at the end of the day it really is just probably a case of the cell phone itself not being not working as well as it once did. And I have a Galaxy S9, and it wouldn't be the most insane thing to upgrade, but I'm really tired of upgrading cell phones. It's getting ridiculous how consistent that is breaking. Although with this chip shortage, it probably isn't a terrible idea to get a new cell phone at this point. Anyways. And maybe I could hand the S9 down and work it that way. That's a thought. Certainly, since at least in this case the only problem seems to be with Wi-Fi, which may not affect other people who aren't running the DDWRT Wi-Fi software. But yeah, the signal is at like a negative 60 decibels, and by default the settings are to allow a connection if the signal stays above negative 128 decibels. The bigger the negative number, the less quality you have. Ideally, you would want it at 0 decibels as far as the signal to noise ratio. But you're not actually going to get it to that. Some of it certainly is the location of my Wi-Fi router too is a problem. But yeah, it's just been driving me insane, and the only even temporary solution I figured out is to just tell it to straight up just disconnect my cell phone when it gets usually it would give it like 3 strikes and then disconnect. I'm just telling it, look, as soon as you get a low signal, just disconnect. Now Android phones will eventually stop trying to connect to a Wi-Fi access point if it keeps disconnecting them, which is a problem. And see, this is a problem that is affecting both the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz spectrum, which that is the same chip that's for both, but it really shouldn't be. It really is just like a range thing. The other solution is, had the other router not broke, and I could have used that as an access point, and that might be the next step, is to, instead of getting a new cell phone, just getting an access point and putting it on the other side of my house. But honestly, I should probably just get a new cell phone. It will be cheaper and easier to get a whole new cell phone that I would need to get anyways than it would to spend like $100 for an access point, or like a wireless range extender. Ideally, I don't want a wireless range extender because that would just kind of repeat the same issue where I'd have to then put a range extender somewhere in the middle between where my cell phone is and where the router is. Now, I would say Wi-Fi routers are also probably hitting the max, much like the Raspberry Pis. They're hitting a max amount of just heat that they can produce and
Yeah,
and cooling that they can use to counter that heat.
Justice finds a way.
So this very well is a situation where you're just you're just never going to be able to put more CPU power and more speed in the circuitry until we get more efficiency in the chipsets and the technology, or the routers themselves are just going to get bigger and bigger, and I don't think people want a giant computer-sized router on their desk. I doubt they even want a standard office router sized device on their desk.
Lawful evil. Chaotic good.
But yeah, that has been plaguing me for months, and I don't even know what really started it. Whether it was an upgrade to the firmware because of a different issue, or if it was maybe I just dropped my phone and didn't realize it. Anyways, I imagine most people are tired of me complaining about that. And I haven't been able to figure out if I messed up my server and locked myself out of it when I restored the backup or not. I think I did, but maybe I didn't. Maybe it's just trying to log into the wrong boot menu option. So let's start going through games. We have here Lisa and the Grimoire, which this is one of these RPG games, RPG Maker games with a character with big busts. I think this is fairly obviously censored, where there would be more cleavage showing and probably a few sex scenes and nudity that they've just taken out. This is 1529, English, Japanese, and Chinese. Yeah, you can see here she has more of a bikini top in versus what they've covered up here. And it's even in the trailer. It shows her in more of a bikini top. So that's a little weird, frankly, because if it's gotten down to the point where both characters' cleavage windows are just so big that is something Steam is having a problem with now, that certainly opens a lot of doors to a lot of games either being taken off of Steam or just new games like that not being allowed on Steam. Whereas at the end of the day, it still is a case of just there should be some level of curation, like just a council of gamers. Like Steam and Valve could easily select 1,000 to 10,000 people on their storefront and say, hey, we're gonna ask you to be a council of gamers and let you put a thumbs up and a thumbs down to these games, and for that we're going to let you play these games for free for 2 hours as a demo to review them. Or there might even be a automated way in which you could implement the same type of system where it could be that games that are just overwhelmingly negative start getting delisted from Steam. But I don't think that works, because by the time something's overwhelmingly negative, it's already pretty much done its damage as far as flooding Steam. In a weird way, the concept of Steam being flooded with low quality games is just underground issue, certainly, and it would only show up as a big problem. It's kind of like a quicksand issue where there's flooding underground, but you don't see the quicksand until you step into it. So in the equivalent of Steam, that would be if a vast majority of AAA developers and publishers delisted all of their good games on Steam. If it became a scenario like what we feel like they're trying to do with Netflix, where everybody's splitting off and going to their own streaming services and just trying to create cable channels once again. Yeah, at that point, Steam might try and say things, or might still try to sell itself as the largest storefront for video games, but that may not matter one bit if there really is only just like 40,000 terrible low effort video games on Steam. Like, it even now is fairly difficult to find good games once you have the top 2,000, 3,000 games on Steam. You've pretty much gotten anything that's available on PC to play. Oh, I did watch a YouTube nostalgia video talking about an old screensaver that I used to play with called Castaway Johnny, I believe is the name of it. It's a kind of interesting screensaver where it has a lot of random events that happen and then some scripted events that show the life of a castaway stuck on an island and some silly antics that happen around that. And as dumb as that might sound by modern standards, that was actually a very, very popular screensaver for me, and I think anybody who had a PC. There was very few people that had PCs back then, because this is like Windows 3.1, maybe Windows 95 days. There is an argument that screensavers should somewhat come back for a few scenarios, but not too many. Like, there is terrible screen burn-in on my cell phone because I have it set to not go to sleep because of the game I'm playing, Destiny Child, which runs forever. So that caused screen burn-in, whereas a default setting would have had the screen go dim or go black, and that would have not happened. So that really is my own fault, certainly. But that does certainly highlight the fact that you can get screen burn-in on modern screens, and I imagine there's not any real technology that would completely avoid burn-in. I think even ink can get burn-in if you leave it there for years. I think it may take years though, or if it breaks completely. In bigger monitors and TVs, they often have a pixel moving algorithm where if, for instance, one pixel is black and then the next frame the pixel is black, they may move that pixel over to one pixel to the left and one pixel to the right, just kind of shifting the entire screen one way left and then one way right, just to not have screen burn-in. There's really only so much of that I imagine you can do, because at a certain point you would have to, if half of the screen is black and half of the screen is bright white, you can't shift the whole thing. But yeah, there is some technologies that try to work on that. 3 damaged all people. Alright, well, if we played this,
The uncharted desert awaits.
and then what else do we want to do? I guess we'll do this.
You've got the face of a chameleon. Mana, come forth.
I'm ready for more.
There we go. that should work fairly well. I need to hurry up though. I don't want to go late into the night, and I might even want to get back to playing Danganronpa. It's kind of stupid easy to play this extra game mode of Danganronpa, so it is not very demanding to jump back to it as much as it was in the main game where there was a lot of reading. Here we have a game called Minecraft Shooter, although clearly it's trying to be misread as Minecraft, and it's even using what probably is a trademark font. This is 59 cents English only, and this is not even something that you would call the worst case of garbage tier games. It is potentially offering a product that you're not going to get in Minecraft or a Minecraft mod, which is actually being able to shoot guns. But yeah, it is pretty unethical to steal something, and probably illegal to, as far as copyright infringement. There's the idea of the right of first refusal, where somebody who owns a copyright does have the right to decide to not publish something or publish a derivative work, as it were.
This match is mine.
And you kind of could go one way or the other there. I'm sure Disney doesn't want people out there making porn parodies of Mickey Mouse, although in all fairness this might actually fall under the category of a parody. Like, this is parodying Minecraft's visuals in part, so it might actually win in a court case as under fair use for that reason. But I imagine if it really went down to a court case, they'd say, well, you're not parodying anything when you're using the phrase, the font. You're not parodying anything when you're calling it Minecraft, instead of, which is one letter away from Minecraft. Frankly, these kinds of issues and copyright in general get fixed very easily if we were just in a system where you were given a grant to create whatever you wanted, and that grant was pretty much the only reward you'd ever get for creating something artistic, and you didn't have to then protect the copyright and fight for it, or have music producers who own your album's entire collection are making money off of someone else's creation, or comic book companies that are making tons of money off contractors who aren't. I don't think comic book creators get any kind of residuals for reprints or anything like that. And see, it may seem ridiculous that the grant would be the only reward for creating an artistic piece, but if that is a grant system on top of already having a universal basic income that takes care of all your needs, that leaves an artist to effectively live their life and a non-artist to effectively live their lives in the same style of luxury, or lack of luxury, probably a fairly average lifestyles. And then an artist can be focused on creating art if they want to, and not create art if they don't want to. Inherently, there has been this argument, as I'm falling into an economics rant, that people have to do something, because in the past they did have to do something. They had to work fields, and they had to work farms or work in factories and construction to build things. As everything becomes automated, we may very well get to a point where most people can just sit around and lazily live their lives away. And certainly that might take some new ways of thinking, and that could lead to depression but a life of luxury, a life of laid back, easy luxury, is not something that needs to be preached against or that people should be scared of. And frankly, there are people that are such workaholics that they are scared of the idea of retiring or just living in anything other than the constant struggle that they have known all their lives. Anyways, moving on, we have a game here called the Death Tower Wizard, which is a much worse asset flip game, where it's just a side-scrolling platformer, but also enemies spawn and you have to fight them, which is a little bit of a combination of two different types of games, as a side-scroller beat 'em up, or like almost action RPG on a 2D plane, with also platforming and avoiding of dangers. This has a third-party EULA. It's $4.99. Obviously, it's not something that's gonna make it to the follow list. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Onion Games launches a survey to gauge interest in older title revivals. Chalup, Rule of Rose, voice your requests. I don't know any of these games. Rule of Rose, I think I've seen. So, let's see if we can see this document. Okay. So it's Japanese/English. Where do you live? How do you identify? That's an odd phrase, but I suppose most surveys would want to get that. How old are you? Let's see. What social medias do you use? Clubhouse, I guess, is coming into general use for some people because they have that mentioned here. What's interesting here is that they're not mentioning anything like Billy Bong or any of the more Asian social clubs. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Discord. I don't even know if Discord really counts as a social media. Which games you've played. So, Monomore, never heard of it. Moon, I've definitely seen a movie called Moon, 2 movies called Moon, and a game called Moon. I'm not sure if that's the Moon they're talking about, though. Romeo and Juliet, and probably never seen that. Dandy Dungeon, Blackbird, and Million Onion Hotel. So those all seem to be fairly varied around what platforms they're on, and apparently Dandy Dungeon is the only one that's actually on Steam. These others must have been predecessors of Steam. Well, Blackbird's on Steam too. So they haven't put anything out in a while. So we have a game, Chalup, Rule of Rose. I would be very interested in seeing that game re-released and remastered. A port of it, maybe as much as you're gonna get, though. Let's see, is that even an option? They're kind of limiting your options here. A lot of these are concerts, so that they literally just don't know what to do. And so they're just launching a survey. Surveys like this do happen, and often they don't mean anything at all. Because it could be that an intern or someone without any real power that is just in charge of doing this survey. So let me see if I can maybe pull up Rule of Rose. Wikipedia, is that the best way? Like I kind of would prefer to show the trailer, more of a visual, than show the Wikipedia article. But I'll look at the Wikipedia article and see that, yeah, as as far as scores and remastering it, Rule of Rose was a fairly early Japanese horror game to come to the West, so you have Metacritic giving it a 59 out of 100, 3 out of 10 Edge. Famitsu gave it a 28 out of 40, so it wasn't that much more popular in the East. Like, nobody really liked it. And I imagine that's because it had a lot of trappings of an alone in the dark fixed camera angle type game that just is hard to hard to really move over to PlayStation 2 controls and the evolution of things there. Alright, let's see. Pull this up. Here's the trailer. I don't know if the internet's gonna give me trouble.
This is my fate after all.
Let's see, let's move that. Nope, can't do that. So you have this girl in the trailer and she's lifting her skirt like she's bowing, and then she's like lifting it really high, and then the camera pans away. Then we have a different girl and a different girl. So it's like these three psycho bully characters that are bullying this other girl. And I think it's all kind of like a Silent Hill if Silent Hill was set in a different horror thing. Here you have a girl holding her hand tight so that she pierces her finger with the rose. It's rather creepy. They showed this trailer on G4 in their like cinematics a lot. Like, well, G4 re-showed a lot of things. And here you have a fatter character putting on lipstick wrong. And you see this dog is running around. And hopefully I won't get content ID claimed for such an old thing. But you can see even in the cinematics here, the animations actually for the time for PlayStation 2 don't look too bad. And you can see here they're putting someone in a coffin, and I assume it's someone who's alive. So it's like this creepy school. And there are some other cinematics certainly around that. It's like a creepy creepy school where you wander around. I'm not sure if there were any actual monsters or anything that you dealt with otherwise. I think it may very well have just been an adventure game. And so that's you've got it in the niche category of being a horror game in the first place. You've got it in a slightly more niche category of being a Japanese horror game, and you've got it on the PlayStation 2, and it probably wasn't ever highly gonna likely succeed, and I don't think it played very well. And Rule of Rose would definitely not have been a game I even recognized if it weren't for the fact that G4 played the trailers and the teasers all the time, and so that made it recognizable to me. It definitely looked interesting. I'm looking at the opening now, and there's another girl character who wakes up on a bench, and there's some other girls characters. So it's kind of like an orphanage / maybe girls' school that it takes place in. And so yeah, if you were going to port something like that and you're not going to remaster the graphics at all, you at best it has some other weird imagery. Here you can see a big blimp opening up for this opening cinematic, but then the opening cinematic jumps back to very much the trailer that we just saw. The only difference is now you're seeing this character, who is, I believe, the character you're playing as, and it looks like she's got some kind of gun and the dog. It probably did have some ambitious ideas around having a dog and using a dog to have to wander around. And perhaps it's a little too controversial to have a group of 3 psychopathic kids tormenting you throughout a game. And just dark, spooky imagery too, but yeah. I imagine what you would do with something like this is you would just port it to a cell phone and port it to PC while you're at it and just not polish it at all. You can certainly do some smoothing and anti-aliasing on the edges, but once you start scaling things up to 1080p, you are going to very quickly run into an issue where there's just not a lot that you can do. There we see the hand of a actual male character. So, and then here that jumps to her being tied down by vines or chains and being held down. And see, you've got more scenes of the psychotic group of people. And there almost certainly is a level of perversion. Like, they're putting a rat next to her face. There's water falling on her. I don't know if they're actually pouring pee on her or not. I think she's just in the rain. Yeah. But yeah. It was definitely an out there game. And then you have like these bright light scenes that I think are supposed to be counter flashbacks of what you're experiencing in the main game and maybe the real world where everything else is like a nightmare. If anything, Real World really highlights some of the other, like, maybe visually interesting, standout single game single game experiences out there. There definitely have been instances where there definitely have been instances where somebody has made some horror game and then it's gone nowhere. El Shaddai is kind of a great example of that also, where where it was a visually interesting but low budget experience. Yeah, I'm not going to show this next video that popped up on YouTube because it's the ending of the game, but it definitely highlights the way the game actually played, and that's that visual quality is particularly lower in the polygons than the cutscenes. So the cutscenes themselves might work, and if you were just going to try and replace or release the cutscenes alone, that might be an idea. But yeah.
This match is mine. Feel free to call on me again.
Actually worked fairly well there.
Golly, it's chilly here.
Yeah, that was a pretty pathetic ending that it just showed me. Apparently that was a good ending. So yeah, I don't know how you wouldn't like just port that to a cell phone and try to make some more money on it, whereas there probably is an idea there where you could make a remaster, and at least then you have the general theme and the story. But people get sensitive about kids, and I imagine there was even controversy somewhat even back then. Maybe it was too small to stir up any major controversy. So I see Lynx is on the chat saying hi. Hi, Lynx. So yeah, if you were gonna try and make a horror game like Silent Hill, a horror adventure game with probably minimal fighting, or closer to Alone in the Dark than Silent Hill, and put kids in it even today, I think you would probably run into some pushback, to say the least. Let's see. 2 damage to an enemy follower, spell boost. Let's see, what can we do otherwise? I don't think we can do much of anything else. We can silence that one. And in the turn. Honestly, if you think about it, when's the last time we even had a creepy kid movie? Like the latest Children of the Corn movie from like the 80s. We had the Boy and Chucky movies, but those are creepy dolls, not creepy kids. Trying to think. Like Freaky came out relatively recently, but they aged that up to a teenager, where since Freaky was based on like Freaky Friday, that could have been preteens and kids, but no, instead it's just a high schooler that looks like a young adult. Of course, Hollywood wouldn't really want to work with kids that much these days, because of a lot of different issues that I won't go into, but I kind of think that Swedish film and the remake of that, Let the Right One In, that came out in the 90s. That might be the last time we've had any kind of creepy kid movie at all, and I wouldn't know about books. You have a creepy kid in the movie Hard Candy, that would have been in the 90s, so you've got that. I don't think there's been a remake of like The Good Son or anything since then. And like Hard Candy is very psychological. There's no deep horror things. I suppose arguably the most recent creepy horror movie with a kid in it would potentially be the Grudge remakes. I guess there's a creepy kid in those. Or the Silent Hill movies, which does have a creepy girl in one of them. But yeah, they don't put a whole bunch of child actors together like Children of the Corn anymore, and they don't let child actors be the celebrities. That's part of a bigger issue, certainly with movies, is that they just don't let new actors get more successful anymore. It's all about digitally de-aging Tom Cruise or Will Smith and having them yet again be the main leader of a show, of a movie. Like, you could easily see half of Will Smith's action movies or Tom Cruise's action movies introduce some new young actor, and it just doesn't happen. Even like the Fast and Furious, I think probably did introduce some side characters that could have been spun off into their own movies, and it just didn't happen. And of course, movies very possibly are completely dead at this point, so we may never see any kind of correction to that issue. Alright, so let's do that.
I serve in hopes of a better tomorrow.
Let's play that. Moving on, we need to hurry up and get through the news. We have a Grand Blue Fantasy 7th Anniversary Special live stream has been set for March 7th, 1730 to 2100 Japanese Standard Time. So yeah, they're gonna, I imagine, talk about the anniversary of Grand Blue Fantasy. I imagine there won't be, yeah, it's live in 5 days. I imagine there won't be anything super groundbreaking to non-Grand Blue Fantasy fans, but there might be a few little announcements to catch people's attention. Certainly, the Japanese are very good about hyping up their games. Alright, so I'm going to play this. And then do that, I guess.
What I create today.
And I think that's as good as we're gonna get. See, next we have a game called One Pixel, which looks like it's a slight platformer, slight kind of tower defense game where they're just constantly coming towards you. I don't know if that really falls under the category of tower defense or just side shooter. I guess it's closer to a platforming side shooter game. They're tagging an arcade. Arcade as a tag really doesn't mean anything. 99 cents, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Not, visually not interesting, obviously. Let's see, well, we can play this.
The uncharted desert awaits.
We can do this.
A galaxy of gems tumbles and twirls.
And then
I'm just warming up.
kill that. And then do this.
A galaxy of gems tumbles and twirls.
And then do this, I guess.
What twists and turns await? I'm just warming up.
Hit that, I guess.
How dare you? How dare you?
And I guess I'll just hold off on that turn. Gamatsu has Hatsune Miku Logic Paint S coming to the Switch, which that sounds like a Hatsune Miku themed Mario Paint type game. Apparently it's already available on the App Store and Google Play. It's tagged as a puzzle game. Interesting. Official title and main visual. Hatsune Miku is hitting a point where she's coming to an anniversary. I don't know if... let me turn my microphone. I've been leaning on one side and been a little weird sounding, I guess. Yeah, Hatsune Miku is getting to an anniversary. I don't know if too many people particularly care about her. She's been fairly replaced with newer iterations. Let's see. Deal X damage to a follower. You could do 3 damage. Which would do 3 damage to that follower. I guess we could do that.
This match is mine.
Magic! Bow to my pawns! Make your move!
I'll see you in purgatory.
But yeah, it would be really hard to get into Hatsune Miku at this point, or Vocaloid in this point. It's always going to be a thing, but it's now been supplanted with just standard VTubers and the collection of music games that I feel like would be fairly replaced. Yeah, for a brief moment there I thought about maybe starting a project of building a karaoke machine, but in retrospect it might be a lot smarter to just do a little research and find like what is the best karaoke singing style game out there, because there probably is something on Steam that would twitch that itch, scratch that itch. Yeah, that's the right phrase. More than trying to build things consistently. Like, I guess the real question is there a game out there where you can load up your own music with the CD plus G files or the MP3 or FLAC plus G files so it could play? Or are you limited in every single karaoke and maybe every single music game to whatever collection has been licensed?
Very well.
A lot of the music games definitely are down to just what has been licensed, and that worked fine with Rock Band for a while, but you can definitely tell that nobody has kept a Rock Band disc sitting around, or the Rock Band guitars or anything like that sitting around, because it took up so much space and it just was not worth the investment of square footage. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Shutter Nyang, which looks like this is a platforming game where you maybe take a picture of some platforms and then can move them around. And Nyang, I don't know what that means, because like Nya is the sound in Japanese for cat, but Nyang, I don't get. So it's like Shutter Meow. See, yeah, and you take these pictures and you place them, which that really just makes it feel like the game is going to be super easy, and then they're going to either have to work very hard to make it more difficult, or they're going to just waste a lot of people's time. This is $14.99, which is too expensive. English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. I guess I could be super generous and put this on the fall list. Apparently I'm signed out of Steam, unfortunately, so... I did get DNS Crypt to finally actually work. I don't know if I mentioned that on my router. So, that's like halfway towards a VPN. It's still not really a VPN. At the end of the day, going to any specific website, they still are logging the direct IP address of my router and my internet connection. The only thing is DNS Crypt stops man-in-the-middle attacks of people snooping on what sites you're visiting, or at least in theory that's the case. But it is also kind of a middle ground versus installing a virtual private network and potentially renting out a service, which is probably what you'd have to do to get good quality and a secure one, and then also losing internet speed for it. You may notice in any advertisement for a VPN, they always say you can click a button to turn it on, or they focus on that, because in reality, most of the time you wouldn't want to turn it on. You would only want to toggle it when you're trying to, I don't know, access other countries' content on Netflix and things like that. In fact, most VPNs advertise themselves clearly as circumventing the terms of service and things that you allegedly agreed to when you signed up a service. No, I don't think Netflix cares one bit.
What do we have here?
If you use a VPN to log into a different country. You probably have to have a different account for Netflix too if you are trying to get like Japanese Netflix. So that would probably be a secondary issue. And at a certain point, instead of using a VPN, you should just probably jump to the next idea of just using a Tor setup, and then that would probably give you more security than using VPN in the first place. Moving on about video games, we have a game here on Steam called Lost Assassin, which doesn't look like much. It just looks like it's a side-scrolling 2D shooter platformer. It's early access, $4.99 English. Yeah.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Spiky, which once again looks like nothing. It looks like a physics game where you're bouncing a spike ball all around the place. See if this trailer actually shows you anything. Nope. $3.99, bunch of languages. A lose and try again type of game, which that's what I call frustration games, for lack of a better default descriptor.
You like the cold?
That was resplendent.
What do we have
Okay.
here? I'm not afraid of the light. What do we have here?
Eradicate all demons.
Think I'm gonna lose here. Next we have a game on Steam called Kojo, or Koju, I don't know. Kojo, perhaps? Then you're in a castle. You've got solid colored characters. You're walking around, searching people. Yeah, this seems a little too low effort. Yeah, early access, $2.99 English only. Weird for it to be an English only game and then have a not recognizable English word. Yeah, we've seen plenty of horror games like this where you're just wandering around a 2D environment and you have to search certain places. What's funny is I think the game that started seeing games like that actually was free, so now having somebody try and sell it for $3 is probably more of a step backwards than a step forwards, because it doesn't feel like they really added anything to the content. Here we have a game on Steam called Barred Harder, which they're calling a visual novel choose your own adventure game, which seems like it's a couple people playing Dungeons and Dragons, and this seems to me like it's probably a Western visual novel. Price is $1.99, English only. Multiple endings, new friends, original music, 30-minute story. Eat hot chip, be gay. So maybe it's a LGBT type game. A lot of Western visual novels are. Yeah. Honestly, if you are only going to be spending 30 minutes with anybody and they bring up their sexuality that quickly, you are in probably the company that a lot of people don't want to have. Like, I would be fine knowing someone was gay if I had been their friend and talked to them for honestly 2, 3, 4 hours would be fine, but I'd like to know somebody's personality more than that at first. Like, that seems super one-minded and single-focused, and that is, I think, how a lot of these Western visual novels, I'm not going to call it just straightly an SJW game, but it definitely has the stink of being an SJW game, where I'd kind of like to see it earn it more. Like, if you told me in the new Tomb Raider reboot that Lara Croft was gay, and at the end of the third game in the trilogy she reveals that would be an interesting twist. I'd be like, okay, that's fine. If you did the same with the Uncharted games, that would be an interesting twist, particularly since there's a lot of his former girlfriends, I think, in the Uncharted games. Nathan Drake's former girlfriends show up. But the reason why I'd be fine with that is that you at least have a character there that we've grown to know and love first, and particularly in like the Tomb Raider games, while Lara Croft was always depicted as a fairly sexualized and sexually like open, developed character, we never really saw her with a main man or anything. So so you could make that switch if you wanted to, but then you'd also need a good reason to make that switch, and not just for virtue signaling.
What masterpiece will I create today?
Yeah, particularly that first rebooted Tomb Raider game, you were chasing after your friend the whole time. It would have made a lot of sense if that female friend that you were trying to save was actually your girlfriend. Of course, Tomb Raider being a Square Enix big enough game, they probably wouldn't have been willing to do that. On the other hand, if the Tomb Raider reboot had started and it was, my name is Lara Croft, I go by she, her, and I am gay, that would be pretty obnoxious to see that as the first thing she's ever said.
Let's see how well you handle this.
You would want to reveal that in a more natural tone.
Embrace your vast potential.
And it's the same for the other way too. Like, I would feel very weird in a real world situation in a game if I just met a character and in the first 30 minutes people are telling me that he's straight, or he's such a masculine character. I guess in GTA they have the Ballad of Gay Tony, so they put that out fairly quickly. But yeah. Anyways, moving on, we have Dots and Lines, which is the pen and paper game, which is a single screen Unity game, like cell phone game. I don't see how you could justify even $1.79 to play this game. Like, Dots and Lines is not a fun game even when you're playing it on pen and paper. It's actually just a mathematical scenario that if you know the trick, you can pretty much win every time. But yeah, it's just not a fun experience. So
Why, you've got the face of a chameleon.
Now this.
I hit that,
Darn it all!
and then I guess we evolve that.
Mana, come forth.
I almost always waste my evolves.
What a squishy body you have. You pass.
Next we have a game called Racing Ball, which is just a Unity Marvel game. It's free to play, English only. At least the free to play games know their value at that point. Although at a certain point it does become an man, my throat is so worn out. I have no justification for it being so worn out today either. If I've been sleeping all day, that you would think that would heal the voice.
I'm coming for you.
And even though Danganronpa is a visual novel, the extra gameplay mode actually doesn't have me read that much, because it's just kind of the same thing. There definitely have been points where I've just gotten fairly quiet and not said anything lately in the last few episodes. Here we have Domino Killer, which Killer Domino is a type of dominoes, and actually there's been kind of a lacking number of domino games, but you've got a problem here in that this is $17.09, and you could get tabletop simulator, which would let you play with dominoes and a whole lot more for $19.99. So they've priced themselves completely out of the market. If this was $1.99, maybe, but they are way too expensive. So of course that means it's not going to the fall list. Speaking of which, I'm not making really any progress, so let's try one of these. Gemetsu has an article. The Cyber Troopers Virtual On series creator Juro Watari has left Sega. My future is still unclear, Watari says. We're constantly seeing Japanese creators, big names, leave the established gaming companies of Japan, and some of them are forming new companies, which maybe that'll work or maybe it won't, but a lot of them seem to just kind of be either retiring early or leaving the industry completely. I don't know how much can be provable as far as this might be side effects of PlayStation of Japan, Sony of Japan just not being emphasized anymore, and now Sony Interactive Entertainment being a very Western company. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is actually 5 to 20 games that normally would have been approved to be published on the PlayStation or with some funding from Sony that have just not been approved, and so the cycle of getting development money to make new games to keep employees very possibly has just ruined the entirety of the video game development world in Japan.
You're mean.
It could not be so much about Sony. This is definitely a story that does not mention Sony at all. I'm just speculating there. This could very well be more of a case of just the pandemic and the economy in general in Japan taking a turn for the worst. So yeah, I could definitely see that being the bigger issue. And I definitely don't want to see that happen. Like, I would much prefer Microsoft step in and rescue 3-4 big tier companies. Like, if Microsoft has to buy Sega, if Microsoft had to buy Sony of Japan's office, or Sony in total, if Microsoft had to buy Square Enix and Konami, I would much rather see that happen than to see all those companies die on the vine. Of course, maybe for like Konami, if Konami went bankrupt and then the licenses could be acquired through bankruptcy in Japan, that'd be great, but I don't think that's really how bankruptcy tends to work in Japan. I think those licenses will just be forever lost in confusion. So if we were to say lose Konami, there's a decent chance that things like Silent Hill would just never be made again. And at a certain level, maybe we don't need new Silent Hill games, even though there's rumors of a couple being in development. Maybe we just need something new that feels like Silent Hill, but is an improved version of that. In the same way that we probably don't need an Alone in the Dark game, and we probably don't need a Prince of Persia game, considering how Assassin's Creed, at least originally, was replacing that idea.
Are you as excited as I am? Well, are you? Go! Go! If you want me to hurt you, just say the word.
Concentration here.
Well, that worked way better than I thought it would. Next, we have a game on Steam called Light Blue, which is a dark horror game where you're walking around, dark screenshots a lot. In the trailer, when I was watching the video, there were some elements that looked like they might be somewhat nicely polished as a creepy horror game walking around with a ghost. But really, I think this is just going to be a hide and go seek type horror game. It's $2.99. It's English full audio. I guess I could put this on the follow list and see if people really like it, but there is that high danger of it being liked by a lot of people because some YouTuber streams it, not because it actually is a good game.
Try and break this blade.
I'm gonna scoop out your guts.
We should evolve that next time, I guess. And then here we have a game called Desdemona, which, let's see if this is the same developer. This one looks a little worse for visuals, and it is way worse with the dark screenshot syndrome. Like, I can't see most of the image here either. This is early access for $14.99. This is made by Bot Johan Gunnar, or Gunner. But this is made by UUT Games. Yeah, so Desdemona not gonna make it to the fall list. That's not quality.
I did it. I won.
Okay. So that got 7 matches done. Now I just need to get 1 match with Runecraft, and then I could play Shadowcraft. Oops, I played Bloodcraft when I should have played Shadowcraft. Alright, well, I guess then we should probably try Shadowcraft. See if we can go in there. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Missing, which looks like it's a VR horror asset flip game. Graphics look pretty bad. See, and this is once again kind of the problem with like re-releasing or porting Rule of Rose, is that Rule of Rose would totally look like one of these games and totally play like one of these games, and that is just not impressive by modern standards. $1.99 for a VR game is incredibly cheap, English only. You almost want to see an argument for really cheap VR games, but you don't want to see an argument for low effort asset flip games on VR. And horror games in VR in specific, I think, are hard to justify. I think a lot of people would, even people who like to play horror games, don't want a screen in front of them in which they can't turn away and can only really close their eyes, and they can't, like, and they're just trapped in that environment mentally. That might be a little too extreme if you put a really good horror game in VR. Also, I feel like anything that's going to have you potentially jerk or run away is a bad idea for a VR game. Somebody's going to eventually just start tripping over things in their excitement or horror. Oh, I do follow the creator on YouTube, and I occasionally watch their extremely long live streams. American McGee, creator of American McGee's Alice and Alice Madness Returns, although he doesn't own the rights to Alice or Alice Madness Returns. I think Ubisoft owns the rights to it, which has made it often not available for purchase, even in its unported, unpolished, unremade versions of those games. I think you can pretty much get those games at the moment on Steam. I should probably check that. But He's been trying to negotiate for a long time with only maybe promises of success that there would be a remaster of American McGee's Alice. I wonder how much of that really has to do with him putting his own name on it originally, but also it probably just has to do with the fact that he lives in China and isn't there to communicate face to face with Ubisoft people in France. Like his decision to move to China to communicate with the animators and the teams that worked on his projects may have bit him in the butt in the long run. Of course, he's also married to a Chinese person in China, so it'd be weird for him not to be living in China. So instead of all that, this is a long setup by far. He's been working with a company to do something. Like a company has been wanting to work with him, and it was going to be a remaster of Alice, but that wasn't going anywhere, so they decided, forget it, let's make a new project that they can own outright and wouldn't have to deal with. I believe it's Ubisoft. I could be wrong. Who actually owns it?
Don't look so disappointed.
But so they have kind of, it's slightly big news that they are going forward with creating an American McGee horror style game based on the Wizard of Oz books, not so much based on the more childified, for lack of a better term, kid-friendly version of the Wizard of Oz that was shown in the movie. I'm a little surprised they never remade Wizard of Oz.
Oh, so it's a fight you want. Anyone call for a super sleuth?
Need a loan?
Which, okay, that might be good, that might be bad. I mean, you really just don't know. I think American McGee and his team do have a chance to make a pretty decent game there, but they also have the danger of potentially treading over the same material again. Like having played Madness Returns and being very oblivious to just the amount of abuse that was being screamed subconsciously because American McGee himself suffered abuse as a child. It wasn't until like a direct point where you're walking into the broken out crotch of a doll that I'm like, oh yeah, this whole level is about like sexual abuse that's either being implied happened to this version of Alice from Alice in Wonderland, which there's a whole bunch of stuff to be said around that in general. So while I like the art style mostly and a lot of the content that is shown, I would be slightly concerned about them just going to a particularly dark place. Oh, I mean, of course it's going to be dark. That's what American McGee does. But my fear is that it would go very, very dark. And I should have killed that and then evolved that and then done that. And I could have had yet another Master Sleuth.
There never was a mystery.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Mars War Tower Defense TD. It's just a tower defense game, obviously. $7.99, that's laughable. I mean, it doesn't even look like a terrible tower defense game, but like, there's just no reason to own even one. I cannot imagine for a second somebody actually likes to play tower defense games for more than 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna see if I could get the search to show up here. Alice space American.
Don't underestimate me. Is fighting and despair all you know?
American McGee. Madness. Yeah, none of those seem to show up on Steam at all. So apparently they aren't included in the Ubisoft games at all. No, it's an EA game. And so yeah, I'm wrong. They're not EA. It's not Ubisoft. It would be EA. And then EA is based out of Redwood City, California. Not France like Ubisoft. So yeah, you have the sequel Madness Returns, which is not apparently on Steam. And then there was a couple sequels that never, I think, actually got made, which generally he would like to do that. But see here, you can also see that he had stated that they were going to make a game called Alice Otherlands, and that never happened. And then in 2017 he said he was going to make Alice Asylum, and the problem there is, like, mostly all American McGee has done probably in a decade plus is just sell merch and sell concepts, which that's fine if you kind of need visionaries to sell concepts. I wouldn't be upset if he literally just licensed his ideas out to somebody else to make them for him, because the actual gameplay development stuff is where you're gonna probably need a third-party game developer. I just don't think his team is polished enough to make any games. It's not like they're putting out a lot of other products. He does take part in what's called a pirate game jam, where a bunch of people go live on boats in Southeast Asia, I believe, and for a month and program games while living on boats, which that sounds more like a vacation than actual working.
Drowned in light. I'm just warming up. I'm just warming up.
Let's see. And yeah, you can buy it at EA still. And you can get it from Origin, which is EA's thing. And see, that's what EA has been doing, is they've been just holding it on Origin since it's a niche game. And then the original Alice, American McGee's Alice, is a 2000 game that is also, I guess, on Origin at this point. And it desperately would need a full-on, like, remaster. You could polish it up, certainly, but it's just not going to work. I've never even played American McGee's Alice. I only played Madness Returns. The hard M rating as a factor certainly is an issue. And see, here you can see on Wikipedia, they even have like the music score listed.
The sun watches over us all.
It was 85 out of 100, so let's see what the reception of Madness Return was. Let's see, Metacritic 75, like, you can see for the long amount of time people waited for it, the sequel was not that well received. It might have suited him better in his career if he had simply moved immediately to a different type of game or a different story after the first game anyways, because Madness Returns really does expand on the Alice in Wonderland story in a different direction and makes it its own thing, makes it like a full new creation where
Mana, come forth.
you would,
Turns out I'm just warming up.
where I imagine the first game is much closer to just
Shadows are
following
gathering.
the standard, following the main story of what you would expect to see in a Alice in Wonderland story. There's plenty of books, both for Oz and Alice in Wonderland books that you could use as inspirations for sequels, but most people haven't read those books. So then you lose that connection, then you might as well just have a new character. And at a certain point that does kind of highlight the fact that that you are probably better off making your own story loosely based off in a character like Alice in Wonderland than making a direct commentary or direct conversion of something like Alice in Wonderland.
Why, you've got the face of a chameleon.
Alright, well, guess that'll work.
I'm just warming up.
No! This match is mine.
I love how you slither about. What a squishy body you have.
Here we can look at American McGee's company, which is called Spicy Horse, and look at their products. Was just this American McGee's Grimm, which was a game in 2008. And then they made Madness Returns. Then they spawned a child company for creating mobile media games for the iPhone. First title was Dex IQ. But let's see. Here you have like an iPad game and an iPad game and Madness Return in 2011. And then here we have one called Big Head Bash to be announced in 2012, which never happened, obviously. Crazy Fairies, which was to be announced, I suppose, or did come out. Then here you have something called the Kinero Demon Hunter in 2013, which, let's see, is browser based in 2013, and that's like the last thing Spicy Head has done, so you'd almost assume that they're out of business at this point, although I think technically it may still be in business. Nope, it's actually defunct in 2016, so I don't know. Like, he's in 2016 he became an independent. He actually started the Pirate Jam thing, so yeah. So Out of the Woods board games, he's working on that. And then 2015 made a game called Chains of Darkness via Spicy Pony, so that's a mobile game. and a game in 2013 called The Gate via Spicy Horse. And then the upcoming Alice Asylum is still listed as upcoming, which
The uncharted desert
you're
awaits.
probably putting too much faith in that. Never actually coming out.
The earth rains from above.
Oops. May lose here. I doubt it though. So yeah. He was born in Dallas, Texas, I noticed. So if he was to move back to Dallas, Texas, he very well could go work for some of his former co-workers at id Software, because he did work at id Software originally.
Best of luck to you.
The real battle.
But once again, being married to a Chinese person, he probably wouldn't do that. It's kind of a unique
Faced by the earth.
highlighting of the problem of making a niche dark story something that a lot of people are just not going to want to play or reject. I mean, as a game itself, if you don't care about the story and you don't care about if you don't care about the story and you don't care about platforming games, which is all it ever was, then you're gonna not be very interested in that. And see, that is, I guess, inherently a problem with even trying to make a video game based on the Alice series, is that it has to feel, I imagine, like a platformer, a 3D platformer, and we are far past the point, which it was about Nintendo 64 era and maybe early Xbox One and PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 era, when 3D platformers were at their peak, and now they are
For us all.
pretty much non-existent. Even when you do have an occasional 3D platformer, they come off very bad compared to something like Mario 64, which I feel like is the maximum of it. Maybe you could learn something from like Mario Odyssey, which is a 3D platformer but does a whole bunch of other stuff, and so you could steal a lot of ideas. But I don't know what else, what you pull off as far as that.
You don't stand a chance.
Let's
The
play
shadows are
that
gathering.
too. Right, that worked. See, so yeah, the only place you can even get Madness is buy now through Origin, or buy on Xbox or PlayStation. And I assume that, see if we even have a way of, and I can show off some screenshots here, and can't even really show off the screenshots, it's too zoomed in. It like scales the photos up, so I can show off the bottom parts of screenshots, and that's about it. And the graphics did look good for the time. They still look fine as far as Madness Returns. But yeah, having to buy it on Origin and having a secondary place potentially where you would have a collection of games is
I have lost.
kind of a pain. Let's see. And then here's the original game made by Rogue Entertainment, which is basically all the same people. And EA doesn't even really seem like they're selling this game, because there's no button here that says buy now from Origin or anything like that. Whereas of the other two things, this one does have a buy now button. So like the original game is just not even able to get.
That should do it.
Which at a certain point, if that is the case, I mean, you can't not sell a game and then also be upset if somebody goes and pirates the game if they want to play it. And I don't think it really is just a buggy issue. I think it is just EA licensing deals and EA not caring about things. EA is notoriously one of the worst game publishers in the eyes of the fans, so yeah. Them doing something awful isn't super surprising. Of course, that was a long rant to say nothing really other than American McGee is starting to work with a different company and a different publisher, and if he can get a publisher to work with him, that's great, but he pretty much, I think, needs support companies too. If I was a publishing company, I definitely would say, American McGee, we want your name on this, we want your company's input, we want the art, we want the story. We think that will catch people's attention as a callback to some of your greatest hits. But in all honesty, we can hire out a third-party company to make to actually program the games. And honestly, 3D platformer, maybe not even the right kind of game for him in the first place. Not to say that it should turn into a first-person shooter. What it should probably be is something that has a lot more cutscenes in it to tell a more interesting story by modern times. There's a lot more room as it is on hard drives nowadays to have animations and cutscenes. Something closer to Witcher 3. You won't get anywhere close to Witcher 3, but yeah, having maybe just a more simplistic gameplay mechanic and more focus on something closer to a Telltale game, as far as we're just going to put the camera right up in the face of the if this would be Oz, that would be the characters from Oz. Dorothy. Took me a while to remember the girl's name. Yeah. Just put the camera up on Dorothy or the Scarecrow or the Cowardly Lion or the Tin Man, and have them have conversations with other characters a lot more. And then for the actual gameplay loop, maybe you just have a standard, like, either first-person shooting type gameplay. I don't know how Dorothy would be able to shoot magic, though. Like, that doesn't even make sense. At least in the Alice in Wonderland, there was the Vorpal Blade that was talked about, and that Vorpal Blade got expanded quite a bit to... darn it. That was the wrong one to do. The idea of the Vorpal Blade got expanded to be used throughout the entire game when Alice in Wonderland wasn't running around slicing people up with the Vorpal Blade, and then she got other kinds of weapons too, which kind of made even less sense. But like Dorothy, on the other hand, either you establish that she's a witch to begin with, and she has magical powers, which that kind of works, or you have hand-to-hand combat with a Dorothy character. There was a Oz TV show that went one season and I think got canceled because I haven't seen it in several years, so I assume that got canceled. And in that, they brought an adult version of Dorothy to Oz and expanded on the idea and heavily focused on the fact that there were witches in the universe, and it was a more mature, dark concept, not just a kid-friendly experience. And inherently, I think that's kind of part of the problem, is that you're taking what is seen as kid entertainment and then raising it to a different level and subverting expectations too much. But yeah, in the TV show they did literally just give her a gun because she was like a police officer in the regular world. So yeah, you might just go with that idea.
There are 1,000 ways to die.
Or you do something like the Wolf Among Us in the Telltale games, and then you basically have no major action scenes.
Love the feel of the earth.
It would be fairly ridiculous to have Dorothy say, click her heels together every time she attacks. You could perhaps expand that and have her kick a lot, and just at a certain point that almost feels like that Cinderella escape game.
I shall give birth to a new world. Judgment.
But yeah, there was this escape game. It was an adult game called Cinderella Escape, where Cinderella, or a character like Cinderella, had her arms tied behind her back and she was trying to escape, so she could only kick. And there might be an idea around that. Or maybe you go a little comedic and she finds ruby gloves that lets her punch and make it more of an action beat 'em up game. But yeah, that's where your creativity is going to have to go into overdrive if you're going to try and convert something fairly well known and set in stone like the Oz books. Let's see. Storm. Is this gonna work? No, I think we destroy that first. And then let's see. Guess we'll do this. Kill that. Man, I've gone on some side rants and I like that I'm having a real conversation here, but I'm not getting through games at this rate. It's been 2 hours already. Here we have a game called Grappling Ball. This is just a parkour Marvel game combined, where you can kind of parkour and grapple to the edges. $4.99, English only. Here we have a game called Star Steel, which looks like it's a widescreen shoot 'em up game, and I like that it's widescreen, but otherwise it looks very uninteresting. It's $1.19, English only. Alright. We do this. Giant skull. How much is a giant skull? It's 6.5. Does it have rush? No, it has ward. Let's do this. And then bury something big.
Feast upon me. I shall give birth to a new world.
Alright.
Thus the world begins.
And I don't think that triggered anything. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Dangerous Sea Area, which is clearly just a
Cycles on.
asset flip survival game of no interest. 1999, English only.
Activating system
Terrible
interface
thumbnail.
subroutine. Swifter than prayer.
Here we have a game called Boulder's Puzzle, which is a box pushing puzzle, box tumbling puzzle game. We've seen these done better. Early access for no reason, $1.49. English, Swedish, and Polish. That's a unique combination of languages. I could evolve this for 5, or I can play Ward.
Does this outfit make me look too old?
And then 5 damage. There.
That's hot.
And that wasn't enough by any means. We put this on the field
Coming for
and then
detestable.
attack that. Here we have a game called Active Mummy. This looks like just an 8-bit platformer. There's spikes popping up. Apparently he can stick to walls and the ceiling, which kind of makes it feel like it would be fairly easy to do these platforming sections, so then they would have to make them very difficult. You can see it's just one screen though. $2.99, asking quite a lot for what it's offering. Actually, we're fairly close to the end. I keep forgetting that I moved the tab around. We have about 10 more tabs. Here we have a game on Steam called Guns of Succubus, which looks like it's a bullet hell shooter game, low effort bullet hell shooter game with also some anime, cheesecake, visual novel elements. $5.59, English, Japanese, Chinese. We may very well get to a point here where there's not even a single there's not even a single like low effort Chinese game to complain about today, which probably just highlights that either a lot of games didn't get approved this week over the weekend, which is very possible since today's Monday, or that between Twitter messing up, there just hasn't been, I haven't seen a lot of new games listing, and I've missed some games, which that might be the case too. I'm not gonna sweat that nowadays though.
This one's for my family.
TechRaptor has an article here. Google Stadia's launch troubles are detailed in a new report. Yeah, Google Stadia, from what I'm hearing, is basically this. Google Stadia didn't follow the Google formula in the idea that they wanted, apparently Google in general wanted them to release a game within a year with no delays, which that is just not going to happen. I think part of the problem certainly is the idea that Google Stadia is under the Google branding, when the whole idea of them making Alphabet was to spread out the development and such. So if I were the person in charge of Alphabet, I would have said, let's spin off the game development company and have that not be under the Google formula and have it be a little bit more protected and funded directly through Alphabet's, which maybe that the funding there wouldn't actually work. I don't know if you can easily filter profits from Google to Alphabet, then to a Alphabet subsidiary, or if you have to kind of keep those more separate, probably could. It may be just something the lawyers would have to write up. But yeah, had it been under Alphabet instead of Google, I think maybe the Stadia game development part might have worked better. The actual background internals of having a streaming service in the first place is, I think, a lot better if that was
Nothing stops me once I got my speed
the
boots
thing
on.
that
Everything all right here?
that Google focused solely on, because inherently Stadia as a concept has a chance of working, but
Son of a gun, ain't
they needed to probably have just bought more games or hired more game companies to make Stadia exclusives, and they needed to have more patience. And inherently, I think this is kind of the problem with Google in general, is that you're just never going to have anybody who can stick around long enough to make effective change, because it's so built into the Google mentality of it's got to succeed and it's got to be wildly popular, and Google in general has to care about it, otherwise they're going to kill the project. Yeah, but we kind of knew this too. Like, anybody in the know pretty much knew that Stadia, being a Google product, was doomed from the start, so it's no big surprise. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Satori 5, which is apparently 5, I would guess, board games. Here we have Shogi, or some variation on Shogi. This actually doesn't look like it. They're actually playing Shogi, which is Japanese chess, and I don't know how to play it. I just actually installed an app. Here you have Othello, which the squares for Shogi and the squares for Othello are different. And then here you have what looks like regular chess, but there's too many pawns and no other pieces, no kings on the board. So honestly, this may be, they're calling it Chinese chess, because I think this is a Chinese product, where I've always thought of Shogi as Japanese chess. At a certain point, it's probably a little bit of both are true. But honestly, all these games seem to be not really playing the right way. This is free, but then there's an art pack for $2.69. It's English, Japanese, Chinese. Take your pick. I think that seems to me like it's a let's see. Yeah, it seems like it's a fairly low effort Chinese game, trying to sell itself with kind of a unique anime girl with a monster on her, which I don't know what that's all about, really.
never be content.
Moving on, Gamatsu has The Binding of Isaac Repentance for the PlayStation 4, 5, and Switch, launching in Q3 of 2021. So it's not DLC, which the PC version will launch on Steam on March 31st. I guess at a certain point, if you're playing The Binding of Isaac on Switch, that you may potentially have a scenario there where you're
Ice is snow chuck.
yeah, you might have a scenario there where you're just having to switch between 2 or 3 different versions of Binding of Isaac, depending on which ones you want to actually work with. Moving on, Gamasutra has this article. Sony announces a string of partnerships to support black communities. Sony had also partnered to kind of build up the Chinese game development things, but I think this is probably something slightly different. It's going to work with Black Girls Code, which I think that is more of an educational young girls getting into code thing. The Hidden Genius Project, which I've never heard of. Gameheads, which I've never heard. And Black in Gaming. Now, inherently, if there's a reason why there's less than the national average of African American or black people in general, I guess it's going to be black because a lot of game developers actually aren't in America, or the United States at least. Like in the United States, about 20% of its population is black, so about 20% of its coders and programmers should be black, and we think that's pretty much not the case, and it's no good excuse for it at all. It's just straight up people like to hire people that look like them, racism type stuff. And yeah, that is something that should be addressed, certainly. There is kind of a problem, and particularly in Google, you kind of have this as an issue, but in California in general, they have, but like Google's been straight up sued by this because they stopped classifying Asians as being minorities in Google. So if you were an Asian male, you were considered just a white male, and thus they didn't want to hire more Asians at Google. Instead, they wanted to hire more other people of color, because Asians are people of color too. So it becomes like the racism and the conflict between like black people and Asians have never been particularly great, and I feel like a lot of Sony of Japan's office is not going to be happy with an announcement of this on top of everything else, and it definitely screams virtue signaling, and SJW politics might have taken some place here. But the general concept is right. Yeah, we do need more black people in coding, which inherently means we need more black people to get college degrees, which inherently means we need more black people to have money to get college degrees. Or maybe we don't need any coder with a college degree. The easiest thing Sony Interactive Entertainment could do, and any company like this could do, is say, hey, let's just lower the requirements to be a programmer, and let's find some good programmers out there that don't quite meet the work experience requirements and don't quite meet the education experience. The inherent problem with game development is that it is a very small, tight-knit community anyway, so there's plenty of people out there that would like to make games and can't do it, and there's plenty of people that would like to be in the independent game companies and can't get business loans or get any of that started. If anything, I would say the growing fandom of black people in anime has definitely helped in the West build up fandom for anime. Like, hearing a lot of black people talk about their love of Dragon Ball Z is really heartening. And I like hearing that whenever I occasionally do hear it, because it shows that the fandom can grow and that there are audiences out there that are interested in that. So yeah, I can't say there's anything really wrong with this idea. It probably could be used to say maybe Sony Interactive Entertainment is not focused enough on actually making games, and so we may 4 to 10 years down the line say, boy, did Sony Interactive Entertainment in California just drop the ball. Boy, did they not develop any good games. Like, I definitely don't want to see tokenism happen. I don't want to see them hire a black person and then say, hey, we're making a game all about a black person, and then they basically just make a minstrel show of it.
So sweet, you'll get cavities.
So you have to be careful there. And certainly there are a lot of black people who talk about the idea of tokenism and any black will do as a concept instead of hiring people based on their skill. Which there are skilled people out there in of many different colors, and we should try and hire more people that are skilled in general and be egalitarian about it more than trying to find your token female or find your token black person. We've seen the tokenism with females, certainly, where you have people that are even fairly qualified to do their job being hired to, and that their projects being canceled or failing anyways. There was the female director of the Star Wars game, Floor 1313, I believe, was what she was working on, and they just kind of failed to support her from the sounds of it, and just canceled her project before it even got off the ground. I've heard definitely rumors that hiring managers and people in charge of video game companies are terrified to hire females in particular because of how unprofessional and inappropriate a lot of the males in game companies are, and we've seen a lot of complaints of that. And so there's just this level of growing up that needs to happen in general. And so if there was just kind of a major affirmative action push to hire a bunch of black programmers and game developers, I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of just quickly evolves into complaints of rampant racism, and a lot of those complaints may be very justified, where a lot of those complaints may not, might be exaggerated or might be unjustified.
So sweet, you'll get cavities.
So yeah, but that's hardly a reason not to try and diversify your work base. If anything, it's fairly obvious that a lot of games are very boring, like the Call of Duties and things like that are very, very boring games and formulaic, and the wrestling games are very poor quality, and I think it's stereotyping for sure, but I think you can find the right collection of black fans of wrestlings and first-person shooters that could work on those projects and make a better
Golly, it's chilly here.
product.
You don't stand a chance.
We really are going everywhere, all over the place today in conversations, aren't we? It's like, I have I don't want to give out too many details, but I have a relative that is very young, and I was very happy to see just how many and how diverse his groups of friends were. I guess I gave the gender there, but yeah, so there is a future generation that could be made that is much more egalitarian and much more accepting of different people and different cultures. And I hope that sticks with people, and that older people don't instill bad habits and bad ways of thinking. But yeah, you never know. Like, if you had told me 10 years ago that there would have been seemingly a rise of white supremacy in the United States, I would have laughed in your face. But yeah, or I would have been surprised that it would have gotten as upfront and obvious about it. Not to go on a different rant, but yeah, I kind of knew it was there even 10 years ago, but it was much more sneaky about it and much more done in whisper conversations instead of out in the bold. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Team Fight Manager, which looks like it's kind of nothing, like a strategy management game. $9.99 English Korean. That's too expensive for what it is. And really, this probably would be something you'd want to play on a mobile phone more than a PC. Although that's an unfair complaint to make for any game, because if you want to play it on a mobile phone, then having a PC port is never a bad thing also. The Hollywood Reporter, which is not a place I followed that off, has announced that the young Grimoire actress Ariana Greenblatt has joined Kate Beckinsale and Kevin Hart in the Borderlands movie. So this actress here is going to be playing Tiny Tina. That's a fairly large earring to be wearing for what she looks like her age. So yeah, Tiny Tina could be played by any child actress, and as I was saying earlier, it's nice to see any child actress actually be given a chance to be in a movie. And I still don't know how this Borderlands movie is really going to go or how it's going to work. Like, she does look like she might be either black or Latino, which, does that change anything for Borderlands? No, not really. Not to me. Like, it's going to be more about just the amount of energy and the amount of lines of dialogue she's going to be given, to if she's going to play the character Tiny Tina well or not, because Tiny Tina is one of the most insane characters of the Borderlands universe, and unless they are dropping the entire idea of all of the characters being insane and inbred hillbilly idiots that have been killed and respawned hundreds of times and their brain has just turned to mush, which that was generally what I was getting the idea of. I imagine she'll be a fine pick, as well as any child actor would have been a fine pick. And it's like, I'm not really expecting too much from any child actor either. Like, that would be very ridiculous. We're gonna do a burial ritual. Let's go ahead and hit that.
Hey, no dirty tricks.
Like, I imagine what we need to do is actually bring up a picture of Tiny Tina. So let's open this image in a new tab, and then let me type in. Okay. Here we go. Somebody's already done it for me. So, like, here's the comparison. Tiny Tina has the bloody mask. She has blonde hair with a ribbon in it. She has pink lips, lipstick, blue eyes. She has a headband. She has a slight crazy tilt and dirtiness, and of course the CG cartooniness for it. And her skin is incredibly pale. Most of the characters in Borderlands are predominantly white. There is one character that's black, and surprisingly no Asians or anything else. Let's do this.
Dark Lord, is that you?
And then this.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Then this.
My throat's bone dry.
So yeah, I don't think there's anything crazy here. Maybe they'll bleach her hair blonde and give her a different haircut. The long hair
Never know that.
might be a little bit different. The bloody mask with the, I guess this is the mask headband on the side is like kind of iconic. The bandage on the nose would work fine. I don't see a real reason to make the poor girl wear contacts if she doesn't and change her lenses. There's a decent amount of blush you could easily apply. But yeah, I don't see a big complaint here. There's a whole bunch of other big name actors and actresses already in the Borderlands movie, so it wouldn't be surprising if she literally shows up for less than 20 minutes in the movie anyways. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was just straight up a cameo for her. Anyways, I don't think anybody's going to specifically have anything terrible to say about Ariana Greenblatt's performance. She's 13 years old. So I don't think anybody's going to complain about her performance in Avengers Infinity War as young Gamora either. And if anything, I feel like if she played young Gamora, that means she was painted blue and had all kinds of prosthetics all over her face anyways, which does establish that she is already suited to the idea of wearing makeup and prosthetics in large amounts. So she's probably a really great pick.
Nothing stops me once I got my speedy boots on.
So far, the Borderlands movie hasn't seemingly done anything too crazy with the characters, and but there is just an inherent question about what of the Borderlands movie is even going to be good. It's going to be just like a dumb action movie. It kind of has to be. Otherwise, there's like no clue what it's going to be otherwise.
Justice finds a way.
Moving on, we have an article here from TechRaptor. Super Seducer 3 may finally get approved by Steam.
Son of a gun, ain't ya?
He says, the creator says, almost 100% chance of finally getting approved following a week's worth of delays. Apparently 10 more days of waiting. Super Seducer 3 needs around 10 days to make changes, so yeah, he's just censoring the game to meet whatever Steam's requirements are. It's always going to be a weird battlefield as far as where the censorship argument takes place, and it's always going to be a case that there's going to be a significant number of people that just don't care about a game like Super Seducer getting released on Steam. I particularly don't care if Super Seducer gets released on Steam, but it is still an important thing to keep an eye on, to realize just how much free speech is being limited or how much censorship is being applied to games that are getting released on Steam. Because if it's happening to Super Seducer 3's game developer, it's probably happening to a lot more developers in secret. Although Super Seducer does, we've already talked about this, it presents a slightly different scenario than many other games in the fact that it's full motion video live action film, so it's effectively getting close to softcore porn that's being put on Steam. Well, girls in their underwear is what the trailer has shown. And so when you get that, when you get to that level, you are definitely in a different position.
I serve in hopes of a better tomorrow. Everything all right here?
And so it might be a very unique scenario where full motion videos with nudity or just underwear showing may be not allowed on Steam, but every single anime or animated adult game is still allowed. What this also highlights, though, as a case, is that there isn't seemingly a full improvement happening with the idea of introducing the adults only section, because it definitely feels like there should have been no real trouble to release Super Seducer into the adults only section, unless he's just actively trying not to get it in the adults only section. But yeah, I would kind of hope that you could release a full motion video adults game with full on softcore porn in it if you want, or hardcore porn in it if you want on Steam, but I don't think they're to that point where they're willing to do that. It does once again smack into the face of the idea of them being a libertarian company and being willing to sell almost anything. Next we have a game on Steam here called Space Cube Tower Defense, which, if this is really a tower defense, it's done in a very weird way. You're basically making a Rubik's Cube to line up the colors to your targets. Which, that's weird. $5.99, a bunch of languages. I just don't think there's a real concept here. It is an interesting idea that you might be able to, at some point, teach somebody the methods of Rubik's Cube twisting, speed cubing as it were, and have enemies and targets, and it does let you constantly focus on doing something different versus speed cubing where it's only focused on solving the cube, and once you've solved the cube there's nothing else to do. So yeah, that is a thought. Let's do this.
What masterpiece will I create today?
And then
I'm just warming up.
Earth and assault.
do like this.
What do we have
and
here?
this.
I'm just
And
warming up.
this. Then in the turn. Here we have a game called Wall Street Bets, following the Wall Street Bets shenanigans recently with AMC and GameStop. I wouldn't recommend buying something that's following a fad like this. It's $2.39 English only. You could probably find a much better stock simulator on a cell phone game to do paper trades. I think software, I don't know if you want to really suggest Robinhood, but software like Robinhood that allows individual trading, I think allows you to do paper trades. And I definitely recall at one point I was playing a game that was using the actual statistics of the stock market, but it wasn't actively trying to 3 damage to all enemies. Yeah, I wasn't actively trying to actually trade.
The earth rains from above.
Okay. If I evolve this,
This match is mine. The earth will trample earth and assault.
then we can do that. And we can end the turn. And that'll kill everything except for that, and so he'll then try and kill that. See. Next we have a game on Steam called Scramble, which looks like nothing. Looks like it's just a poor quality board game of some sort. $4.49, English, Turkish, and German. Another weird combination of languages. Board game / strategy game. Okay. Deal 4 damage to an enemy. With essence in hand. Pump up. Well, this one has wards, so we do 4 damage to that.
Should I fall?
And then
You don't stand a chance.
do that.
Make them wait for the boom. Put your
And
arm
then kill
into
that.
it. The world cycles on.
Next we have a game on Steam called Techstream, which apparently is a typing game. Doesn't look particularly well polished or like it's anything. $2.09, which is an odd price tag, English only. It honestly looks like it's just a text editor and not, yeah, it's saying it's a fully functional text editor. It's not actually even a game. That seems ridiculous to be sold on Steam. Let's do this.
Watch closely, apprentices.
And then do that.
The world cycles on.
And then the turn. Capcom is partnering up with someone to make tarot cards based on the Street Fighter characters. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in any closer to show any of the art, and it's got a sample over it. It's an interesting collection. There is definitely a tarot card set made by an artist that I've been wanting to buy for a long time. They ship out of the UK, unfortunately, and I've just never had enough extra money to say, let's buy this thing that is, it's not even that expensive, but it is extra. It's an extra thing to purchase with no good justification, really, to purchase it. That's in general the problem with art, I suppose, is that it is going to be an extra thing.
I go with the wind.
Let's go and kill that.
Body you have.
Should I fall?
I don't know if I'm a big enough fan of Street Fighter to even recognize most of these characters. Yeah, I'm fairly having a hard time recognizing a lot of these characters.
Let the heavens be your shepherd.
Wait, how did I lose?
So that would be hard for me to justify doing that. And frankly, having two sets of tarot cards is crazy. Also, important to mention that they may very well be only doing custom art for the major arcana, and they may not have anything set for the minor arcana of the tarot cards. So you wouldn't actually have a full set of tarot cards if you wanted to play with them. Anyways. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article here. Black Legend launches March 25th. Honestly, I was going to get the tarot card set and just put it in a picture frame and stick it on the wall. That was my plan. It's not like I believe in fortune telling or anything like that. I just appreciated it for the art and the art alone. So honestly, an uncut set of the cards would be as useful to me as a cut set, but I don't think they sell them uncut. And by that I mean when they make cards, they typically print them in sheets, and then the sheets are cut using blades to the right size. Let's see. Anyways, what was I talking about? Yeah. A game called Black Legend launches March 25th. It's a new trailer out. I feel like this is a game that must have announced itself, but I don't remember seeing this trailer for sure. So the problem with a game called Black Legend is it just sounds too much like any other game. And if anything, this kind of looks like it is maybe just a player versus player game. It's fight the cult, lead the resistance. Yeah, this seems like it's a turn-based strategy placement game like XCOM, which aren't particularly games I've been able to get into yet. So yeah, I'm not particularly impressed by that.
I go with the wind.
Gamasutra has an article here. Hardsuit Labs has laid off its staff after being removed from the development of Bloodlines 2. Now, I don't know if this is all the staff. It says a number of staff, a number of developers, which, I mean, that's not super surprising, because that is pretty much what you would do, or what you would have in the cards to do anyways, for in any game development company or third-party company, is that you would very quickly, within a year, lay off, within like a week or a couple days, you would lay off your staff, because if you've got nobody paying for that staff and no jobs to give them, you can't just keep them employed forever. It'd be nice if there was like a union style job pool to put them in and have them go work on their training. It would be nice if there was severance. It would be nicer if there was just universal basic income, so those wouldn't be issues anyways.
Ice is snow choke.
Interesting. So now I can play that as an artifact. I don't know if that's useful, really, but yeah, I don't know what else you can really say there. There was an adult game, and this game is, I suppose, an adult game because I'm seeing the shape of a butt without any real texture of a butt here for this game called Morph Space. But before I talk about that, there was a morph game. There was a adult game where you are playing as very big busted superhero parodies of Marvel and DC style. And apparently it was so hated that it was already rated mostly negative because of the mass amount of in-app purchases around it. And I showed that, I think, on Friday, so yeah. I may have put it on the follow list, but I'll take it off here. This game, Morph Space, it says it's a tiny puzzle game about teleportation, expression, and sensation. And 2 out of 3 screenshots just has the character like fully nude looking into their butt, but no butt crack or anything else. So it looks very odd. Yeah, but clearly it is just a low effort adults game. They're selling it for $4.49, and clearly it's not something worth owning.
What'll pop first? My veins or your face?
Going down the idea in general of having a standard game but the character has a big butt, or a standard game but the character is naked. We've seen a couple of games made by one developer in that direction, and I just kind of don't think we'll see a lot of success going down that route. I just think you're gonna kind of inherently have fewer sales than than more sales. That was a waste to evolve that. I should have just attacked since I had evolved it.
There goes the workshop.
That being said, there is a line. Like, certainly when you have a character like 2B and several of the other characters in Nier Automata, they go up into the line. They have sexy characters and sexy lingerie, but they don't in Nier Automata even show that much skin. There's a line of titillation there that is acceptable in the gaming community, it seems, and you just don't want to go past that line into sleazy. You want to try and keep it somewhat respectable. Tasteful nudes is the joke, and not go insane with it. Let's see, well, 4 damage.
Watch closely, apprentices.
Oops. Why did that not work? Maybe that did work.
This match is mine.
Make some wait for the put your arm into it.
You pass. Anyone ever told you what a snake you are?
Next, we have a game on Steam called Playground VR, which seems to be just a bunch of asset flipped items in VR. Seems like this they tried to make it so you could do a lot of different things, which VR is yet to succeed at being good at doing even one thing in most games. $8.99 English only. We have, I think, one more tab, and then I need to just go through the Humble Bundle and Twitter feed. Yeah, we have a game called Rising Norcam, which this is probably getting over it with Benet Foddy jumping platforming game, but it's hand drawn. I'm not gonna immediately hate on that animation style. If it is a choice, I'm not sure it actually is a choice, but I am gonna hate on the fact that this game looks like it is literally just jumping. Like, This feels like what a normal person would just struggle if they had to jump from platform to platform, and just how frustrating that would be. And it seems like you can take damage and knockback pretty high, pretty easily. This is $5.09, English, Japanese, Spain, Spanish, and simplified Chinese, which is an odd combination of languages. I think at some point a game that looks like this might work, but I just don't think that's the game. Alright. So then that leaves me basically with 2 games that I'm going to put on the fall list. And then we'll reload the Humble Bundle to see if there's any new games. No, the Train Sim game bundle ends in 15 hours, and the plug-in play digital bundle ends in 15 hours, so we might get some new games there. And then that just brings me to Twitter to see if any new news has happened, and some has over the last 3 hours. Let's see. So I need to quickly scroll down here. I probably should open the What's on Steam Twitter feed and just have that open always, just to make sure I'm not missing content. But yeah, it definitely feels like there's just no new news this Monday, which is fine. It doesn't have to be in new news every Monday. If anything, it just kind of highlights that I probably should take Fridays off more and leave after about 2 hours on Fridays, since nobody's usually watching on a Friday anyways. Let's see. Looking at what's on Steam. Maybe I missed a puzzle game. There's a game here called Annihilation that I missed. Yeah, I think I may have missed quite a lot of games. Yeah, because of Twitter messing up. That would explain something, because I went rather long as far as just talking about random stuff today. And feel like I should have had probably 30 more minutes of games to talk about. So I'm now going through this and just trying to curate this. I'm not clicking every single game. There's plenty of garbage games I'm overlooking today. And at a certain level, though, the problem with curating games on Steam is then you're not showing a realistic percentage of what's getting released, and at a certain point you end up just curating everything other than the AAA games, and then you're just covering the exact same stuff that any major video game site is covering. And I guess that probably means that people like G4 and other people I follow that were tweeting stuff probably didn't see their tweets either. I kind of think that's fine though too. It's like I'm fairly happy to check out of Twitter and not check it on a daily basis on the weekends, or in general kind of try and check out on it as much as possible anyways and focus on recording games. I did upload some games, but I haven't scheduled anything in quite a long time. I'm still fine there, but I'm not growing the scheduling buffer, which that's where I would like to see improvement too, is I would like to be able to have a large buffer of scheduled videos. So if I was sick for 6 months to a year, or if I just kicked the bucket completely, content would at least come out for all the series that had been recorded, or most of the series that had been recorded. Almost certainly, if I did kick the bucket, there would be 2 or 3 series that maybe would be uploaded but weren't scheduled. And it would be fairly hard for anybody to even log into my YouTube channel, let alone bother to put it public. No, I'm not 100% sure that I have anybody that I would trust to actually do that and put it public, versus just logging into the YouTube channel and deleting everything or putting everything private. There was a YouTuber that did that, and boy was that a weird experience, because I had a decent number of videos on watch later from this YouTuber that I was almost certainly never actually going to get around to watching anyway, so it wasn't a big loss. But he just completely rebranded rebranded his YouTube channel, and put everything private, and then put up something completely different on his YouTube channel by a different name, and you still had the same subscription, and I'm like, why am I seeing this content? I don't recognize this at all. I don't have any idea whatsoever as to why I would even be interested in this. And it took me a while to realize what had what had gone on, and then I, at that point, just completely unsubscribed from his channel, and I imagine that's what a decent number of people did. That is really, it was really pointless, in my opinion, to do that. Like, and that's not something I think I would ever want to do. If I was going to try and start a new channel, I would just start a new channel and get whatever help that you might get from that, instead of trying to change a channel with existing subscribers. On the other hand, I certainly understand the idea of wanting to potentially put out content and have it be monetized day one, instead of trying to start a new channel and then trying to struggle to get 1,000 subscribers and get approved. Alright, let's go through this. We have the Laid Back Camp Virtual Lake Matsu launching March 4th, which is a VR game where you're with these anime girls and you're camping and just being laid back. The Enlisted closed beta for the PS5 launches March 2nd. Enlisted must be some new first-person shooter military game. I've never heard of it. And then we've got a ton of games. So here we have one called Micro Annihilation. Now that I see it closer, it's a bug-like real-time strategy game. And I still haven't done the QoS to make images load. So I see that's still an issue. $12.74 English only, I think not for that. We have a game here called Foregone, which the person is playing right now, which is a side-scroller Metrovania and looks really good, so I'll put this on the follow list. It's $15.99, English, full audio, and a whole bunch of other languages. So, yeah, this looks like something that definitely could be a game. It just came out today. It has 17 positive reviews so far. See if this is YouTube family friendly. Close enough. We have Sakura Succubus 4 from Winged Cloud, continuing to release these visual novels under the Sakura line for $7.49 English and Chinese. I don't know if there's actually any nudity here, or if you're just getting anime girls in bikinis. Do we say? Scenes viewers might consider not safe for work. That's not very specific, and probably intentionally unspecific here. I bet it is just bikini girls and nothing else. I don't think the Sakura series, though, needs to really be played by anybody, because you kind of know what it is. It's just Cheesecake Games selling on Cheesecake and Cheesecake alone visual novel type experiences. Here we have a game called Sword and Bones, which looks like a NES style platformer. And like most NES style games, it just doesn't look polished enough for me to really want to play it. And the controls certainly would be fairly suspect too. $2.99 English, French, Italian. I could certainly see some people being interested in trying that out. Let's see. Is this YouTube family friendly? Not only is it that, it's also very low effort. You have a RPG Maker game with a muscly, busty girl, and every single screenshot is just text. So I don't know if there is actually a game here. $1.19 English, full audio, it claims. I doubt that. Seems to be, it's just straight up a visual novel and nothing else. Here we have a game called Not Another Weekend, which looks like it is almost like a Leisure Suit Larry clone, point and click adventure. Okay, I could see this maybe working. It's coming soon. English only at the moment. Let's see. It doesn't seem like it's a sequel to anything where I would think there probably would be a game just called Weekend. And not another would be the sequel. Here we have a game called Gloam, which looks like it's kind of a puzzle game or a couple of different puzzle game ideas. Yeah, I don't think there's enough here to interest me. $7.19 online PvP, English only. Yeah, I don't think that works. Here we have a game called Skyfall. 2D old school RPG with RPG Maker. Not full widescreen. Play the exciting 2D old school RPG game in classic style of Valiant Resurrection by the same developers. So I guess if you know of a game called Valiant Resurrection, that might sell you on this game, but I have never heard of that. $5.94, English only. Let's see if we look at this developer, we might be able to get an idea of what games they've made before. And reviews. No reviews on that. No reviews on that. No reviews on that. No reviews on that. Whole bunch of looks like RPG Maker games with no reviews on it, so they just don't have any relevancy. And you'd think after about the 10th time you've put out an RPG Maker game, which this is July 2019, so they're also flooding the Steam markets with it, you would think at some point they would get the message that nobody cares to review their games or actually play their games, not in any large numbers. And at a certain point, maybe this is a great example of somebody that Valve should step in and tell them, hey, we just don't want your content on our store. You're just not good enough at making games. Your products aren't worth it. It's not worth our time. Like, we are just scrolling down here to 2017 as far as RPG Maker games. Most of them have less than 20. Most of them have less than even 10 reviews. Maybe this was a company that had some success at the very beginning of their experience. Like, way back here, this game Thorn Death Merchants in 2016. It has 146 positive reviews. And Windchild had 45 reviews, 34 reviews. So in 2016, they were making something that was at least possibly good. Seems like it's 50-50 on that at best. But even then, they were still kind of flooding Steam's storefront. They've been doing this for 6 years minimum, and Steam just does not care. This is a massive amount of RPG Maker games. Like, March 14th, 2014 seems to be their oldest game. It was 109 mixed reviews. Their first major success would have been Millennium: A New Hope in April 25th of 2014. And then they made a sequel that was mostly positive with 28 reviews. It's just kind of ridiculous. Next we have a game on Steam here called Tortured Hearts, or How I Saved the Universe Again, which is obviously just kind of an asset flip sort of joke game by that title. Nothing here looks that interesting. $35.99 English and Hungarian, which that's an odd combination of languages. Here we have a game called Retention: A Love Story, which looks like it's a puzzle game. Not sure if there's enough content here or if this is just too wild and crazy and asset flippy. Yeah. Not sure on this one. I bet the price is gonna convince me it's not worth it. Free. Okay. Well, the price is right there. It was made by students, so it's a student project. Alright, I'll put that on the wish list because it's a student project. But that really is the only reason. If it wasn't free, if it wasn't a student project, but was free, I still wouldn't bother to play it or even put it on the wish list. I don't know if I'm ever actually going to play it. Here we have a game called Siege of Swine, which seems like it's an old school Mario Brothers clone, not Super Mario Brothers 1 or anything like that, the actual arcade game Mario Brothers, or Joust clone might be a better phrase. $2.99 English. You can see it's basically one screen and there's basically 5 minutes of entertainment in there at most. Here we have a game called Stories of Liliane, or Liane, I don't know how you pronounce that. Looks like it kind of has a Bioshock feel, but I don't see if there's any actual enemies or gameplay mechanics. Like, just walking around Rapture. Had somebody made a Bioshock where it was just walking around Rapture and you weren't fighting splicers, that game would have not been interesting to anybody and it wouldn't have spawned 2 sequels working on a 3rd sequel. Now, and see, this really does kind of just feel like it is a walking simulator. The price is right, but it's early access too, which is weird. This is going to be chapter 1, so it's also episodic. Which, yeah, I don't think I'll hold my breath for that. I'll wait until chapter 3 comes out and see if it's good then. Here we have a game on Steam called Skull's Impossible Quest, which looks like it's a top-down hack and slash type game. It doesn't look very visually polished. It looks kind of like a cell phone game, and it doesn't look particularly interesting to play. $6.95 English full audio. Here we have a game called Master of Wills, which looks like a card game. Looks like it might be a fairly complicated card game. Free to play, early access with in-app purchases. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything here. If anything, though, this is an interesting idea as far as stacking cards on top of cards so that you can have more cards to sell. Normally you have things like Magic the Gathering where they manipulate the rarity of cards so that you have to buy more cards and you end up with a lot of useless cards. The idea of having a stacking ability where you are going to play cards and that they're going to actually be shown and seen a lot more often is an interesting thought. Getting more value for cards is definitely a better thing. Magic the Gathering is particularly terrible about value for cards per pack because you're getting like 2 or 3 land cards that are more than likely worthless in that pack, and the cost of printing those land cards, of which nobody really needs extra land cards, is getting offset and subsidized by the cost of the pack and the other cards you might get that might have useful value as far as playability or resellability. Next we have a game on Steam here called Crazy Wheels, which looks like it switches from top down to behind the shoulder driving in kind of a Mario Kart style gameplay. It doesn't look visually polished enough, though. It's early access, $13.49, it's a little too expensive. English, French, Spain, Spanish, Chinese, and Japanese. Maybe if I knew this developer or they'd done something else, I might give them the time of day, but no, I just don't think we're ever gonna likely get a highly polished, good quality Mario Kart clone on Steam. We'll get something close, but not quite it. If anything's one of the like developers like EA or Ubisoft would make their own spin-off game for PC specifically. Here we have Dr. Xenophon's Laboratory, which this is just all dark screenshots. A sci-fi puzzle platformer is what they say. $15.99, English full audio. Not seeing anything here. Yeah. Does not look like there's enough visuals here to keep me interested. We have about 20 more tabs. Here we have an Asian game, so there was at least one Chinese game mobile port that had come out. It's free with in-app purchases, but English is not supported, so that's an easy pass for me. Here we have a game called Hands On, which seems to be just a bunch of surreal hands floating around in a VR game, which seems like a troll game. $8.99. Says it's English full audio, but the interface and the subtitles don't support English, so English language is not supported, which that just shows how bad the listings can get messed up. Here we have a game called Zadet, which seemingly has you playing as a either very zoomed in character with the camera or a giant character with a sword. Yeah, it shows some pretty poor level animation and drawing here that I can't just justify as an art style, and the gameplay doesn't look like it's anything more than clicking a button to swipe down in one animation with the sword. It's $5.39, English only. Yep. I don't even know what a developer like that would have been thinking. Here we have a game called Halloween Steeplechase, which seems to be, if I was to guess, a collection of infinite runners. Again, very poorly animated. $2.69, English full audio. Yep. Maybe there's some platforming that happens on top of just infinite running. Or maybe you're actually running and trick-or-treating at the same time and there's just a dog chasing you. Also. Yeah. So maybe a little bit more to that game than I thought, but not much. Next we have a game on Steam called Wuhan Prologue, which is tagged as a stealth horror game. Yeah, and it does seem like it is a stealth horror game, or at least a stealth game. I haven't seen any horror. This is free. Bunch of language supports, although Korean is the only Asian country that's being really emphasized here. Chinese, simplified Chinese down there, and no Japanese or any other Asian languages. Although I guess in this case it would just make more sense to put this on the follow list, the actual game. I guess you're supposed to be a vengeful spirit because that's a picture of a bunch of dead bodies. What's funny is that it seems like you have some kind of gun-like ability in a time frame where it doesn't seem like characters would have guns. I'm willing to put this on the follow list now. There's a chance that's good. Next we have a game on Steam called A Sleeper's Quest: A Labyrinth to Thee, which either this is a puzzle platformer or it's kind of like a Myst-like. I kind of feel like if you were going to remake Myst or compete with Myst, you probably should have some platforming. I mean, that's what Uru tried to do also, and it didn't really work. And I guess The Witness kind of argues against that idea too. But if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if I was going to make a game like Myst where I would just give you the ability to jump and then never require you to actually jump anywhere. It would just be yeah, you can jump, like any normal person can jump, but it's not required. This is $4.49 English only. I don't see enough here to make that an interesting game. Next we have another game in an Asian language, which this looks like your standard fare visual novel with anime girls. 2 different anime girls. English is not supported, $1.79, Chinese only. Not terrible for a Chinese visual novel. At least almost every scene has a character on it. And the animation style looks decent, where in the past we've seen some pretty terrible versions of that. Speaking of terrible, here we have something called Snake 2 DX Reawakening, which clearly is just like a joke game. Just random assortment of things. Yeah, $8.49 English full audio. Next we have a game on Steam called Bunker Down, which seems like it's a even worse version of 60 Seconds. Where you're running a simulation of running a bunker. $1.99 English. See, next we have a game on Steam called Wartune Reborn, which looks like it's a mobile RPG that's been ported, and that's why they're zooming out all the screenshots and focusing more on the characters and their cleavage, which you'll never really see them like that. You'll see them as pixely little characters, or maybe you'll see them in cutscenes like that, but there'll be very few cutscenes. Seems like there's a match 3 element minigame and maybe even a fishing minigame too. But I think the vast majority of the time you're going to be just playing an RPG element. Free to play with in-app purchases, English only. It's kind of weird to see a game like this English only, because this definitely feels like it would have been more designed for the Asian audience too, at least as a secondary thought. Here we have a game called Hani. We may have already talked about this game, though. Yeah, I think we did. So I went back a little further than I thought I did. But yeah, I think I put that on the follow list anyways. I'll just double check on that point. Which probably means we already talked about Berserker. Yeah, we did. But I'm fairly certain we didn't talk about this, called Arden's Awake, because this looks really, really nicely polished. Is this a real game? It says VR story rich. Is there actual gameplay here, or is this just a VR animation? Because I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a animation. $7.99 animated short. Yep. And this highlights a factor, certainly, that the animation people are not working well with the game developers out there. And perhaps that's because the animation people have better writers who want to tell a linear, specific story and don't want branching paths or video game elements distracting from the story. Or perhaps it is just that video game developers in general have failed to really do outreach to animators, and vice versa. Animators have failed to do outreach to game developers. But this definitely feels like a thing that at the very least you could have put in maybe some puzzles or QuickTime events, which maybe would have ruined the experience, but also maybe wouldn't have, because if this is an animated short anyways, it could have been the intro to another game that played completely different. Which, yeah, that very well might have worked if they just took the 3D model of that character and put it in a standard 3D game. And it started with a short cutscene at the beginning that was the animated short. Next we have a troll game here called Visiting a Celebrity, which I can see Putin and Trump and several other troll characters. This is 69 cents, Russian full audio. At the very least, in this case, they're keeping the price cheap for as far as the troll games. We've seen considerably fewer troll games in the past month or so, and that's nice to see too. The Sinking City, we already talked about this, but it is still sitting at 55% mixed due to it being published not by Frogwares. And Frogwares has convinced a lot of people to be on their side. When I bet everything settles down, I wouldn't be surprised if we realized that Frogwares was the person at fault more. But I wouldn't be surprised either way, really. I think we already talked about this game, Horror Squad. It's a 1 to 4 player co-op horror game. Doesn't look terrible. So, if you can play one player though, I think I might put it on the fall list just to see if people like it. And I kind of like that this is a different animation style on the characters. Feels kind of like a almost British animation style of 3D characters. And yeah, anytime there is a even slightly different animation style out there, I want to check it out because that tends to show something new and interesting. And see, we took so long, that was like 30 minutes extra. I'm gonna go back to my Twitter feed and then we should wrap up. And if everything goes alright, I should be able to make a couple of tweets, not tweets, tweaks to my router and get it working maybe a little bit better, but I don't think I'm ever going to get it perfect. And I need to start implementing the QoS stuff. And then I need to decide whether I want to buy an access point or buy a cell phone, and I think it's in the long run probably smarter just to buy a cell phone. So yeah, I wish I wouldn't end up just buying another Samsung because they're getting ridiculously overpriced and less featured, but yeah, I don't know what else I would get. Alright, well that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.